to lose weight, you want to get a six-pack, I can do that for you. Critical is your mental, emotional, and most importantly, actually your spiritual health. So sort of keeping all of that in mind and getting people to think about it that way is, or you've got this disease and you realize medicines aren't going to cure you, they treat the disease, but you want to cure it. We'll do that. I'll get you there. You'll be free of, and I'm not going to have to think every day, okay, what do I eat today and what do I eat tomorrow? Go out for a walk every morning. I do it every morning. So then your consistency is, I'm out every day doing something physical. My salad's going to have a little bit more tomato and a little bit less cucumber. Or I'm going to put grapes in my salad rather than have them as dessert.
Mentor, scientist, endurance athlete, and a health coach. Someone who makes it a point to only get fitter with age. Our guest today on the Settle or Be Better podcast is Dr. Purnendu Nath, often known as Puru the Guru, and who's going to be talking to us about health, longevity, and a lot more. So welcome Puru, and over to you. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about your personal health and well-being story and your current work?
Okay, thanks Sakshi for arranging this. It's great to be here. I'm in Goa at the moment, in South Goa. I've been living here for a few weeks. And so my background is a little unusual for someone who is doing what I do now. Like you mentioned, I worked as an experimental physicist for a while. I studied engineering, then I moved into the world of finance. I was been in that for over 20 years. In fact, coming up to actually 30 years now. And about 10 years ago, I realized that actually what matters most is our internal wealth. I mean, external wealth is good, you need it, but you need it in order to give you all the things in your internal wealth space. And we tend to be so focused on the outside world that we forget that the ultimate goal is to have a life of joy. And so I realized that since I was trying to get fit myself, I was hitting 40 that time, so about 15 years ago, I realized other people around me weren't quite able to do it in the same kind of geeky way that I do. So right now, for instance, I have 30 kilos less on my body than I used to back then. So of course, the trick is not to just lose fat, but also to keep it off. That's the big challenge people typically have. And so since fat tends to be a marker of not great health or longevity, it made sense for me to keep mine down, but also to help people, because the way I see it is, making rich people richer, it gets boring after a while. I still like the challenge. I still engage in that space. But if you can improve someone's internal wealth, right, then that's amazing, because it's not a zero-sum game there. Like if I trade in the markets, when I make money, someone else is losing. But in this space, well, the other person gains, and therefore I feel like I've gained. And not just them, but there's a knock-on effect, because people connected with them also gain. That's the way I get scale. I'm not looking to get 1 billion downloads for an app. I'm just looking to help and make people fountains or centers of expertise and knowledge themselves. And that there's a waterfall effect or a trickle-down effect. And my primary passion actually is teaching. When I teach, I'm in a state of flow. It's like my number one passion. People are surprised when I say I don't like to exercise as such, but I do it because it's good for me. But teaching, that's something that I hope I can do every day. I do it to some extent in different ways every day. So that's basically my background. So it's taking my ability or my natural skills to work systematically and apply it to not just my internal wealth, but to also combine it with my love and passion for teaching and help others also improve their internal wealth. And this internal wealth isn't just physical health, right? In fact, I see that as the simplest thing. You've got to lose weight, you want to get a bikini body, you want to get a six-pack, I can do that for you. But what's critical is all the other components, your mental, emotional, and most importantly, actually your spiritual health. So sort of keeping all of that in mind and getting people to think about it that way is I think, is most important. So not just telling them, oh, okay, you want a bikini body or get rid of your, the fat you gained when you were pregnant 15 years ago, or you've got this disease and you realize medicines aren't going to cure you, they treat the disease, but you want to cure it. We'll do that. I'll get you there. You'll be free of medicine and you'll have a good and healthy life physically. To realize that all of these things are interconnected, right? Ultimately, everything we experience is through our mind, right? And whether it's tasting food or enjoying what I have around here, it's my mind that's doing things. To have and understand and appreciate that connection is really important. Typically living in cities, we tend to not think too much about spiritual health. So when I'm talking to people who are busy in Mumbai or Hong Kong or London, places like that, I mention it, but I don't place too much emphasis on it because people's eyes sort of tend to roll over. But actually, that's the most important thing. I mean, for me, it has always been, I might not talk about it, but it's the one thing I think about all the time. Like when I woke up this morning to make sure that I come here on time, there was this keen focus on the fact that ultimately this has got to be good for my spiritual health. Coming out here, talking, engaging my mind, all of that is good. But there's always that. So we mustn't forget the most important thing. Actually, a key thing, since, like I know what I need to do for my life. This conversation that we're having, and for the people listening in, what really matters is how is this going to add value to them? Like if me just saying things and rambling on about my life, it's of only limited use. The point is, how does someone else implement stuff? And I think the key thing that I want people to appreciate is that do the physical stuff, but never forget that the most important thing is your spiritual health. And it's a sort of like a top-down approach, right? You've got to get your house in order by understanding that you're trying to build this thing which is about spiritual health. And you can only get there through the physical space and the physical dimension, the physical realm. You can't touch your spirit, right? Let's assume there is this thing called spirit, that we won't debate that too much. But we all sense that this thing exists. But nothing we do, other than in the physical space, can really affect that spiritual space, right? So it might be that I'm listening to a hymn and it raises my spirit a little bit, but it's still something physical. There are sound waves, right? There's electrical activity in my brain, etc. So everything is through that space. So if people say, oh, I'm on a spiritual drive and I want to improve that health, but it's okay if I've got all three silent killers, right? Diabetes, hypertension, really bad cholesterol. How does it matter? Like, I'm just getting spiritually elevated. And my point is, yeah, perhaps you don't, because the silent killers, you don't feel their impact now. Pretty sure that when you have the aches and pains in the physical space, after some years, your ability to keep elevating yourself in the spiritual realm is going to be very difficult because our brains are wired to first, what I call the unholy trinity, to escape pain, to seek pleasure, and to conserve energy. So if your brain space is taken up by those things, right, just avoiding pain, you're not going to be able to focus on raising your spiritual health. Like, it's going to be extremely difficult. When I say not or never, I mean it from the perspective of the balance of probabilities. Right? Yeah, sure, there may be 1% of the population that are in great physical pain that they cannot control, but they can still sort of elevate them. But I can tell you, even people who wear whatever saffron robes or whatever it is, and put up this whole thing of being spiritually elevated, I can tell you if they're not physically fit and healthy, then in my opinion, and this is the way I see it, is I find it very difficult to believe that they're on a path that is continuing to still elevate them spiritually. Right? They may have done it when they were fit and healthy, but it's very difficult to. I think the key thing is in all of this, so, you asked me my journey, etc., and I mentioned this thing about spiritual health versus physical health. I think a key point to remember always is that if you're wise, you'll seek out pain and struggle and discomfort consciously where you're in control of it. Because if you do that, then the uncontrolled stuff that happens to you is unlikely to happen or with low probability. But not just that, when it happens, you're better equipped to deal with it. I tell my kids, they're in their 20s, I tell them, and I've always told them, like for years now, that the more you sweat during training, the less you'll bleed during war, right? So even now, I speak to them at different frequencies and intervals, but that's one of the things I keep telling them. That yes, life is a struggle, but people want to escape struggle, right? I actually go out there and I seek struggle, and I kind of push them also. Look, you've got to seek struggle. Like if sometimes you sense your dad's going to put you on the spotlight, he's going to ask you a tough question. Don't try and avoid it, right? Like seek it out and say like, okay, well, when I'm with my dad, I'm in a safe space. And so this is a space in which I can train. It's like you're in a boxing ring with your coach. He's not going to want to really injure you. He might want to hurt you a little bit so that you learn better, faster, you know what to avoid. But he's going to make sure that you do it in this control space so that when you go out there in the ring in a competition, you're better equipped and you can face whatever your challengers or your opponents are doing. This concept applies to us in everything, right? I'm talking about from a boxing perspective, but it happens, for a job interview or, you're going for a promotion and things like that. It's really nice weather here right now. It's very pleasant. But if I say, oh my God, in 2 hours it's going to be really hot and I hate it and I don't like it, etc., I'm sort of getting negative. But if I'm able to handle heat, because I've trained myself to handle heat, because I've gone out there consciously and done it, right? So it's like, I think you're in Pune now and it's really hot a few days ago. and I think you had some rain. But if you go out there and you enjoy the heat and you tell yourself, look, I know this is good for me. There's some, it's not just a short-term pain I'm going through, it's discomfort. I want to get into the air-conditioned room. But you tell yourself, no, this is ultimately going to be really good for me. Then you go through that experience positively, what others might consider negative. But also when things happen to you that you can't control because you happen to be at an airport and they said that the air conditioning shut down and everybody else is stressing out and losing their temper, you still stay absolutely calm. Like not just physically stay calm and relaxed and to know how to control your body internal temperature because you've done it, your body's conditioned for it, but also mentally and emotionally, you're just calm. You're like, people say like, oh, she's a monk, right? She's just so calm. And everybody else is stressing out. Like, how does she do it, right? So that's basically the thing. Take on controlled exposure to struggle and pain and small amounts of stress so that you adapt automatically to things that will ultimately not be in your control. This is life, stuff happens, whether it's losing your job, losing a loved one, having a physical accident because someone else was driving and wasn't careful. There are all kinds of things that can happen. So the point is, since all of these things are interconnected, we want to understand that by doing things which are in our control in the physical realm, we can do things which will then ultimately help us in the others, the mental, emotional, and spiritual, right? And to always remember, because most people have a smartphone and are watching this or on their computers, they typically will tend to be very much focused on external wealth, right? The thing I do is I mentor people around the world, most of whom I've never met, right? But they all go through transformation. But a key thing that I have to keep reminding them of is understand that money is not the most important thing. And they'll be like, hang on, what do you mean it's not important? I said, no, look, I have a PhD in finance. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Actuaries in England. I'm a CFA charter holder. I teach it in London, in Hong Kong, and I've lectured all over the place. The thing I'm saying is not that money isn't important. I'm saying money is not the most important thing, right? And we tend to be relatively binary in our thinking. We kind of hear things as good or bad, but it's not that way. Of course it's important, right? And that's extremely important for me to realize. So not just realize it for the other person and tell them what importance it has to have in their life, but also to ensure that what they do, make sure that from a financial health perspective, they also don't get worse. So when I mentor people, it's not just in the physical realm. So a lot of people come to me with health problems, or they're fit and they just want to get really much fitter. Like a lot of guys have been going to the gym, but they come to me saying, look, I've been going to the gym for 11 years, but I don't seem to get a six-pack. I'll say, okay, let's work on it. And 3 months, 6 months later, they have a six-pack. Or women like, I've been struggling to get rid of this baby fat since I had a baby. And I'm like, but your child's 18 years old, so you had 18 years to do it. What happened? It's it's not like, you gave birth last week, right? So the point is, all of these people have to realize that, yes, that physical health thing is important. And I realize the financial health part is also important. So since these things, the financial wealth is needed for taking care of ourselves, our loved ones, and most importantly, our old age health, etc., right? I can't forget the fact that someone else on the other side that I'm advising or teaching or guiding, conscious of that and sometimes over-conscious. So I've helped put it in place, but because of my background in finance and the world of business, running a hedge fund, advising pension funds on their asset allocation, etc., I'm able to guide people in that space too. And I think that's, coming back to your question, what I do, it's basically to be able to get people to appropriately place external wealth and internal wealth and manage them both well. So I'm not going to tell someone, oh, you know what, you've got little kids, your spouse doesn't work, you've got an elderly parent who doesn't have savings and they're not very well. Yeah, you should quit your job and just, spend hours at the gym and, eat healthy and all of that. No, you need to spend a bit of time in the gym and you need to eat healthy and sleep right, etc. But I'm not going to tell you to quit your job. It's really foolish, right? Unless it's a life or death matter and going to work is really going to be end of life. You wouldn't want to do that. So that's basically what I do. That's just what I do for myself, both my internal and external wealth. I teach this to people. The best way to learn is by doing, and the best way to learn when doing is trying to solve your own problems. But it should translate into not just the problem you're facing today, but into problems you might face in the future. For me, a sign of success is if a person doesn't need me anymore, right? Whereas if I have to say to someone, oh, you look at that person there, I've been mentoring them for the last 10 years. For me, that's a sign of failure. Perhaps a lot of people are proud when they say, oh, I'm a yoga teacher, that lady there, she's been coming to me for 12 years. For me, that's a sign of failure. Because when I go out driving, I don't take my driving instructor with me each time. right? I've learned to drive, right? And I should be able to do that, right? I mean, it's great to go to a class and learn more incrementally and be in a group environment, learn from other people's mistakes, socialize. But if you feel like you can't do it without it, right? Without that teacher, without that class, then, and you've been doing it for a while, then there is a problem here, right? That means if it's a problem with the system and you haven't taught yourself, like, hang on, yeah, I've been going to this class, but surely I should be able to do it myself. For me, again, coming back to what I do, I empower people, teach them how to solve their problems, and then become fountains of knowledge themselves. And then they're able to work independently. I mean, of course, none of us is perfect. I'm studying and learning every single day. Like, that's the big thing. I said, like, teaching is my primary passion, but I'm absolutely healthily obsessed with learning. So I'm learning all the time. So people might think, okay, Puru, you've got there, you've done this, but like, no, I'm not like that. Right? I see, unfortunately, in India, a lot of medical professionals, they leave medical school, they don't continue medical education after they leave. Right? They do a little bit, it's cursory, it's just a formality so that they can keep their practicing certificate going. But I know this, so I mentor a lot of medical professionals because they come to me because they can't really fix their own health. They know if they go to do stuff themselves or go to their colleagues or their peers from medical school, they'll just get treatment. They won't get a cure, right? And what we look for always is cure. And since they know that space, they know they're not doing anything to cure. It's the key thing is to understand that when we're doing stuff, we have to know that ultimately, what is our goal for like the spiritual stuff? And we're doing stuff in the physical dimension to understand the difference between treatment and cure, and to learn by doing, and to understand that there's always learning happening every single day, right? Every time you think like, oh, I went to medical school, that was 20 years ago, I learned stuff. No, even when you're in medical school, the stuff you learn is many years old because they publish books. So if you went to medical school 20 years ago, at that time your medical books were already 20 years old, right?
Exactly.
Right? You take someone who's at medical school now, right now, they're learning stuff that isn't recent because they're not training to be scientists. Right now, as the lay public, we just assume doctors know stuff, right? And of course they know stuff, but do they know everything? And do they know stuff about health, right? No, I say, and with all due respect and place for them in society and in our lives, they're about sick care, not health care. So I always correct anyone and I say, and when I speak, I'll say, the sick care industry, because they take care of sick people, right? They're not taking care of healthy people. They don't teach people how to stay away from disease. And it's not their fault, they weren't trained that way. But unfortunately, most of them don't even step back and think, hang on, if I was the brightest kid in my class or one of the toppers in my year, then why am I not teaching people how to stay away from health problems? Right? I mean, we know it's like a simple, not even an axiom of life, but a great motto to have, that prevention is better than cure. If I'm smart, shouldn't I teach people how to prevent problems? How smart am I to let them develop problems and then say, I'm going to make money off you because I'm really smart by helping you treat your problem? Not cure it, treat it. And I'm the opposite. I'd say, if I'm smart, I want to help people. Well, okay, if they have a problem, I want to cure it. But most importantly, I want to make sure that they prevent that problem from recurring or other problems that they can't see yet, right? So you want to be like the good dentist. It just has people coming in for regular checkups. It's not a lot of money, but then you're a good dentist because you've trained your patients. And of course, I'm not putting all the blame on the dentist or the doctor, right? Most people don't want to take the little bit of effort it needs to live a good life. And it doesn't take a lot of effort, but they're not trained that way. Just like the medical professionals don't go out there and learn about nutrition and food. They should, right? I mean, food is your medicine. Like, why is it that you go to medical school for 4 years and you're so smart that you don't think, hang on, I should know about food and I should learn it myself, even if my medical school doesn't teach me? We don't do that, right? And look, I don't want to seem like I'm having a go at doctors and other medical professionals and surgeons. Like, they have their space. All I'm saying is, like, we should be able to step back. We, as the lay public, need to understand their limitations, right? When I go to my car mechanic, I don't have a car, but if I went to one, I know what he can do. He can't fix my phone, right? He can fix my car, right? So we need to understand that if I read a newspaper article which says, oh, always consult your physician before you start this exercise regime, or consult your physician before you start this new diet, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. In fact, doctors should have a sign out there saying, please don't ask me about nutrition, because people do. Let's say my doctor said this. They should put a sign out there, warning, I know nothing about nutrition. Warning, I got 0 hours of training in food, or I would like you to be advised that in 4 years at medical school, we had 1 hour of lecture on nutrition. We're not taught about exercise, and we know very little about sleep. Now, that's how the system is. But the point is that each of us has this responsibility to learn stuff about stuff that really matters. So the medical professional definitely should. I think the onus is on them to do it first for themselves, not be unfit and unhealthy doctors, but also for the lay public to realize that, hang on, prevention is better than cure. I can only fix stuff if I do things myself. Medicines are not going to cure me, they're going to treat a problem. So if I'm going to take my physical state and use it for my spiritual elevation, I need to understand stuff from the bottom, right? While keeping the focus on that, the top down is the focus, right? But I need to build stuff up, going from bottom up. I need to make sure I sleep right, because if I don't sleep right, I'm not going to have great spiritual health, right? It's as simple as that. So that's basically like the big picture, like top down, spiritual down to physical, but working up bottom up, from physical up to spiritual, constant learning, right? That's the sort of mental health you can think of. Build your mental wealth by constantly learning and understand how it affects your physical dimension, and then learn how to implement things in a systematic manner.
But amazing, it's amazing to see someone with so much experience. Also interesting to see someone from a finance background talk about, how much more important it is to work on your internal wealth, as well as you work on external health, right? So that's amazing to know. And talking about doctors, I think I read this in a Tony Robbins book called Life Force, that it was a Harvard study which mentioned that certain percentage of what doctors study in their degree is almost expired within 6 months, some percentage of the study. So they need to actually go out there and update themselves with whatever the new studies or the new research is saying. So, which is crazy, I mean, because we hand over our health to all our doctors, to our family doctors for years, right? And they are the ones who are only offering us the treatment, not the cure, like you said. And also something you talked about, putting ourselves into uncomfortable situations, because we see people doing ice baths, we see people doing these crazy, say kickboxing workouts, or just going on the beach for a run for an early morning run. All of this looks so uncomfortable to a lot of us, right? So, and we would say that, why would I do that? If I could just get in 1 hour of extra sleep, why would I put myself in a situation where I'm uncomfortable, where I can be completely comfortable? But that's where things like hormesis or hormetic stress comes in, and putting yourself in situation where it puts a certain amount of stress on your body, but to build resilience in the future, and like you said, to prepare yourself for anything that can happen in your life in the future. All of these things might seem little, but these are the things that add on later on in our years, right? So that was amazing. Thank you for sharing that, and this was just the introduction. There's so much more to get into in this episode. And to begin with, when we talk about good health, a lot of people spend years trying to achieve good health, right? Like they always say how important it is for them to have good health, and this new year I'm going to do it, I'm going to work on good health. But when you ask them that, how would you know that you have achieved good health, or what does good health mean to you, they probably don't have an answer, because they have been in this cycle, in and out of this cycle of probably trying to hit the gym or go to a yoga class, do something or the other, but not with a definite goal of how would they really know that they have good health, right? So what is your definition of having good health today?
I like that question. So I guess we could almost split it up into 3 bits. Like having, good, and health, right? So in terms of health, I talked about the fact that, if I broaden it to say wealth, and I think about internal wealth, not the externals. We know that money is important, but it's supposed to serve your internal wealth, right? We don't give up our internal wealth to make more external wealth. It's supposed to be the other way around. It's supposed to be the other way around. Often it's not. Not often, most of the time it's not, unfortunately. But now if I look at health, I have to, like I said, look at it top down. So I have to define health as spiritual, mental and emotional, and physical. And of course, I can only build it upwards from physical. I can only touch the physical dimension. That's how I might sort of quickly describe health. Having is a have now. But what I want to do is make sure that I can't go back into the past. I can only do things in right now to impact the future, right? So the question is, how do I do things now so that I can have good health, not an hour ago, but good health an hour from now, a day from now, a week, a month, a year, a decade? This having has got to be a thing with a horizon. Like when I invest, I don't just say, oh, I need a lot of money tomorrow, so I'm going to invest today. Like that tomorrow's got to mean like many years into the future as well, not just tomorrow or next year, or to pay for my daughter's wedding or my father's old age retirement home, blah, 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 etc. Right? There's got to be a horizon. So this health has also got to be this thing of a horizon. It's pointless saying, I did this, that, and the other, and I did this Ironman thing, and look at me, I'm looking a lot more ripped. When if in 10 years' time, people can't recognize you because you look unfit and unhealthy. So this having has got to have this horizon perspective. And I'm not just saying it, you've got to do things today to impact that. Right? So just as a little tip, given one of the things you mentioned and connecting it with horizon, it's definitely the case we need to take advantage of this natural phenomenon of hormesis, of hormetic stress, little bits of stress that aren't traumatic, they're positive stress or eustress, so that our body adapts, our systems adapt, and we get stronger and better. It's also important to realize that often we're giving stuff up, right? We're saying, like, you know what, I'm going to give up having this dessert, but instead have a little bigger salad, right? Or I'm going to walk to the restaurant rather than call an Uber, because it'll take me 20 minutes to walk, right? So that little bit of stress is important. It's also important to realize that in this space of physical health and the physical things you can do, to realize that, we talk about exercise and food. Typically people not too much attention to sleep, right? So it's true that if you're sleeping too much, you're definitely better off cutting down a little bit, but still staying above a healthy level, rather than not sleep much, like be one of these sort of corporate athletes in India specifically, where you have to wake up really early to go to run, to then get to your office on time. And then of course your office keeps you awake for hours because you get called at odd times of the day. There's no law in India against that. And so you typically end up sleeping not very much. You try and catch up one day of the weekend, but even on the weekend you want to get up and do your long run. And so you end up, typically not sleeping much. And I know this because the people I mentor, we track their sleep, we work on that too, because that's the most important thing. You're definitely better off skipping your workout and catching up on your sleep than pushing yourself to work out. So people look at me and they don't believe me when I say that my average exercise time per day, say in 2023, which was last year, was less than 20 minutes, like 19 minutes, some seconds. Right? They're like, how can that be? I said, no, because you've got to be smart about it. And I definitely slept more than 19 minutes a day, right? My average sleep last year was probably just over 7 hours. I keep track of it. I don't remember the exact number. So the key thing to realize is that this top-down thing, even within the space of things we can do, right? So it's not really about, I have a little bit of dark chocolate every day. Isn't that bad for you or is it good for you? No, it's got to be you've got to see things from the perspective of the entire portfolio. You don't look at your portfolio and say, I've got Apple stock in my portfolio, so my portfolio is going to do well. No, it's a question of how much weight does Apple have in your portfolio and what else do you have in your portfolio? You tend to have a lot of tech stocks, maybe then you're not very well diversified. And if Apple's like 90% of your portfolio, then that's not a good thing either, right? So it's got to be, everything's got to be put into perspective. So we've got this sort of definition of balancing your portfolio, the health of all these different kinds of measures. Key thing also is that word good. So having at various horizons, health of different types, this horizon angle. So when you talked about sleep, people might say, I'm not sleeping much, and I seem to be okay at work, seem to be generally alert, I don't fall asleep, etc. at work. It's true, when I sit in the car on my way home, I doze off within a few minutes, right? Like that's a little bit of a worrying sign. But not just that, in terms of horizon, right? I talked about not just now, but also in the future. A simple thing like sleep, right? I call it simple, but it's actually the most important power tool that we have. If you don't sleep appropriately now, you cannot go back in time when you're in your 80s and fix your sleep in your 30s and 40s when you have Alzheimer's there, because big driver of cognitive decline is low sleep. And so people who try to be heroes, like alpha male saying, I don't sleep much, they show up about it. I'm like, there's nothing to show off about. Like, that's a stupid thing to do, right? So you might say, I only slept 4 hours. I woke up and I ran, 30 kilometers. I'm like, it's great you ran 30 kilometers. It's great you can run 30 kilometers with very little sleep. It's a stupid thing to do in the big scheme of things. And I don't think a lot of people realize it because they get caught up in the momentum of being heroes. But what you want to do is you want to be a hero in the long run, not the short run. It's good to be a hero in the short run, but not at the expense of the long run. Because in the end, it's what matters in the last years of your life that will that's how people will remember you, your ones you're close to, your loved ones. But even you, when your spirit's leaving this planet, right? Its memory is going to be significantly weighted to the most recent experiences. right? You're not going to say, oh, in my 20s, I used to be so athletic, I look great, and all of that. When in your 60s and 70s, you're unfit, unhealthy, life is painful, right? That's what's actually going to take over. So you want to be a joyful, like my father's in his 93rd year, right? I never hear him complain. Like in the last 55 years, I never heard him complain about anything, right? So that's his mental and emotional state is that way. He's very spiritually elevated. Like one of the things he does in the physical realm is he makes sure that he gets a siesta every afternoon. It doesn't matter if lunch finishes late, he will still make sure that he sleeps for, perhaps an hour, or if there's not much time because it's like 4:30 in the evening when he's gone to bed, he might sleep for half an hour. But that sleep is important and he realizes it. So he does it. It's pointless realizing something and not doing it, because then that's not true understanding, right? Okay, sometimes we're caught, you've just given birth, your child needs breastfeeding it, many times a day, you're sleep deprived. That's traumatic for the body. You can't do anything then. You try to make up for it later, right? You try to reverse your aging, right? But the point is, to the extent that you can control things, if you don't, then you haven't really understood things. You're just saying stuff. It's like saying, I love you, but you don't need to, right? You show your love by doing things. You show that you love your body by doing the right things for it, right? Not just for other people, right? If I tell my friend, oh, I love you, but I hurt them, right? In a bad way, that's not showing love, right? That's just talk, and talk is cheap, right? Actions are what matter. Having long-term good health of all kinds, and that good has got to be good not just for now, but for the future too. And to realize that even with the spectrum of good and bad, at an individual level, we're all different. So you, Sakshi, may look a certain way, and you might look similar to another female who looks just like you, but you might actually have very different abilities to perform at a specific task, right? So you might look the same, you might have the same BMI, same height, same body fat percentage as well, but she might be much faster than you or much slower than you when running, say, a 10-kilometer race, despite both of you being trained up in the same manner, right? Just because your individual characteristics are different, that your DNA primarily, and the stuff you've done on top of the DNA to be the way you are. So the key thing to ask is not how am I relative to others, because you're asking what's good, right? Yeah, I'm naturally, because of genetics, I'm already placed in a space where I'm typically tend to be faster than people who are half my age or 1/3 my age when it comes to running. I'm typically stronger than 99% of people my age. But that's not the thing to show off about. The key thing to focus on and to get satisfaction from every day, we talk about what does it mean to have good health? Like that happiness and joy at the end of the day should be to say, am I fitter, stronger, healthier? Not just in the physical space. Am I stronger in the spiritual space as well? Am I fitter in the mental space than I was a year ago? That's the key thing. It's how are we relative to how we were and relative to how we could be. Often people don't even realize what they're capable of, right? And it's as part of this whole kind of mentoring thing that I do, people are most amazed at what they discover about themselves, that they have so much more potential. And then you realize, of course, this is how society has been set up, right? We're focused on, you go to school, you go to college, you do a whole range of things, right? In school, you do a whole range of things. You might do 10 or 12 subjects. You go to high school, you might do 3 subjects or 4 subjects. You go to university, you're narrowed down into a discipline. Like if you're lucky, you've got like a dual degree of some kind. But say you pick a degree, you've taught 4 or 5 subjects within that space already, right? If you're a medic, you go, oh, and I'm doing specialization in this. And then people will say, oh, but I'm doing hyper specialization in this. I mean, that's great if someone's got some rare disease. But you know what? For me, when it comes to health, that's the complete opposite of how you should be. It should be the other way around. Of course, you've got to get specialized in the sense your knowledge has got to be expert level. Appreciate that everything's interconnected and you're becoming an expert on the disease in this one part of this organ. I'm like great. So you can remember and focus on one little thing. But I'm sorry, but you don't understand health, right? That everything's connected and you've got to be really good at a whole bunch of things, right? We're naturally polymaths, right? You don't say, oh, I run a podcast, so I don't know how to make tea because I'm a podcast person. Or my neighborhood chai wala doesn't say, oh, I make tea, I don't know how to make chapati. right? Like what has got one got to do with the other? No, you've got to be as many of the things that are relevant to you, right, and important to you.
Right.
And of course, the important thing is to understand what is important and relevant. And that's, I guess, where the mentoring comes in, because people are often caught up with what society is telling them to do, what your college tells you, what your boss tells you, right? What your friends tell you, what your neighbors expect of you, right? What your in-laws expect that you should be doing because, you know, like you're supposedly well educated and qualified, so you should have this much money and you should have that car and all of that, right? It's just complete nonsense, right? And if you step back and you ask people, you know, what really makes you happy, they'll actually tell you, you know what, I've got all of this external wealth stuff, and it's nice, it's great to show to people, but when you dig deeper down, you realize, you know, it's just superficial stuff. I mean, I'm not saying don't have it. It's great to have and it's great to enjoy, but not at the expense of the stuff that really matters, or that stuff that's inside you.
True. I mean, you know, that's very true when it comes to health. A lot of us are majoring in the minors, like they say, because we just pick one thing that we probably heard one random day, you know, one health coach talking about, and that's what we run behind the whole time. Maybe it's just this adding this one element to your food, and that's all you would focus on and forget all the other things, and it's having this balance, right? So that makes so much sense. And you know, so the way you explain this is just amazing. Like you were sharing that with us. We are creatures of routine, right? Like routine is very important for us to have. There should be something, of course, where you can explore every day, you can evolve every day, but there needs to be some structure, not only to health but to your life in general, because apart from our routine, if you don't have a routine, you would just go all over the place, right? So what is important for you when it comes to health? What do you believe is more important? I mean, is it that we enjoy the process, whatever we choose to do, whatever choice of movement is, whatever we are eating, or is it that you believe that discipline is the most important thing? I mean, you need to show up, you need to follow the routine that you've set for yourself. What plays an important role for you and what has worked out for you over the years?
So I go with science with everything that I do. Like the people I mentor, they know very clearly that not only do I train myself every day to be a better intellectual, but even if they don't have a degree in science. So one of the things we know is that, like, you know, just going back to doctors as to state an example and a parallel, when someone goes to medical school, they're not trained to be a scientist, right? They're trained to cram up a lot of facts, first about the human body, physiology, anatomy, biochemistry, and then they're taught about diseases, and then they're taught about, okay, if it's this disease, how do you detect it, like from the symptoms, what scans and tests you run, and then how do you map it to a disease name, and therefore what medication do you give or what surgery do you do. It's like a fairly simple algorithm, which is why a lot of medical professionals are worried that AI will take over, and they claim that AI can't take over, which is, of course, quite a lot of nonsense. It can't take over completely at the moment. There's nothing special about what a medical professional really knows, right? So that's one part. Then the thing to understand is that if we put things in, like if things are in harmony, then we take the science of stuff which is psychology, which some people might say, you know, there's always a debate, is psychology a science or an art, right? But if you take sort of neuronal biochemistry, if I take psychology, if I take the endocrine system, the hormones, etc., the neurotransmitters, and I look at things that affect me from the external space, one of the things I know is that, you know, if I put $1 in the bank, I'm not going to get rich. But if I put $1 in the bank account every month or every week or every day, then I grow richer, right? So consistency is really important. Consistency, I published over 160 articles on my blog site, right? One of them is called Consistency Conqueror. In fact, the photo for that was taken just here on this beach, is to understand that you have to conquer consistency to have happiness and health. Because it's the things that you do consistently that will build stuff. So once you know that you're on a path that will give you good stuff, automatically you are happy because you're doing the thing that's consistent. So there's no discomfort, oh, I got to do this every day. No, actually it gives you joy. And we know that some of the most successful people in the external world, right, the people who made a lot of money, they remove decision fatigue by just doing the same thing every day, wearing the same clothes every day, right, or having the same lunch every day. The key thing to ask is that thing that you're doing good or bad for you, the thing that you're doing every day? So it doesn't really matter, like if you're the boss of your company, it doesn't really matter if you wear the same black jeans and white shirt every day, right? Like who cares? You own the company. It doesn't affect your physical health, right? But it matters if every day you say, well, I just have burger and fries every day, like no decision fatigue. Like that's not a good thing, right? So you've got to make sure that what you have in your portfolio is the right thing. And so once you do it, you realize that actually discipline, people see negatively. I actually see it as a positive thing, because I see if you don't have this consistency in your life, then actually you're going to spend most of your time thinking about silly trivia. Oh, okay, so what am I going to have for breakfast today? What am I going to have for lunch today? Right? Whereas if you have a standard set of things and they're all good for you, and most importantly, there's diversity, right? So it was, today is the 22nd, so it was Eid about 2 weeks ago, right? The month of Ramadan ended. So during those 30 days, I make sure I'm 100% strictly vegan. At other times, I try to be as vegan as possible. I make sure that I either don't use fossil fuel transport, right? So I'm kind of consistent in that whole month. I will try either not to take fossil fuel transport, or I'll make sure it's mass public transport. So if I have to go somewhere, I'll take a bus, but otherwise I'll walk or cycle. The key thing is that you've kind of got this consistency thing, but even in what I eat, like I'll eat typically on any given day between 45 and 60 things on any day. Specifically in that month, there's no decision fatigue. I need to know I have this disciplined way of living. So I make sure that those 40 or 50 things are the same every day. I don't have to think about it. They're just there. I arrange to make sure that they're there. And I'm not going to have to think every day, okay, what do I eat today? What do I eat tomorrow, right? And all of these things are good for me. So if I tell myself I go out for a walk every morning, I do it every morning. There's no, oh, I need a change. Oh, today I need to, maybe I'll go for a cycle ride. I mean, like, sure, do it. Mix and match things. But don't. So then your consistency is I'm out every day doing something physical, right? You can vary it within it, right? You might say, okay, today I'm going to put, my salad's going to have a little bit more tomato and a little bit less cucumber. Or I'm going to put grapes in my salad rather than have them as dessert, right? So you can have that variation. But to not have consistency is just silly, right? You wouldn't give your money to a portfolio manager if they didn't manage in a consistent manner, right? Right. So, one of the reasons that investors have liked the way I operate is because they see that this guy is going to be systematic. He's going to stick to the rules. He's going to do it. He's not going to try and double my money overnight, right? That's a stupid thing to do. Like the richest people in the world, hopefully, if they want to stay rich, will not look to double their money overnight. They'll see it as a natural byproduct if things they work out. But the key thing is to preserve your capital and to grow your wealth systematically. And you need to do that, whether it's external wealth or your internal wealth. So if you want to have a life of joy, you have to get joy from the fact that you're being consistent. You have to get joy from the fact that you're disciplined. You've got to have joy from the fact that you're doing the right thing, and it's the little things every day, right? In my 93rd year, if my dad is fit and healthy and joyful all the time, right? And physically capable, he walks as fast as I do, right? He doesn't stoop over. He has zero memory loss. He remembers things from the early 1930s. Right? Zero memory loss. He remembers stuff in absolute great detail. You're only going to do that by being consistent every day with the things that you do. And it's not, you might say, oh, Puru, you're lucky, it's genetics. Oh, your dad must be lucky with genetics. No, he has two elder brothers. They died in their 50s and early 60s, right? So he's outlived them by like 40 years, right? And of course, because he has a life of joy, it doesn't matter really that they're gone, right? He has so many people around him going down, the generations, right? He's the oldest person in his generation in some sense, if he's in his 93rd year. Most of the people are, like his grandkids are in their 20s, right? He gets time with them, so he'll be a great grandfather, hopefully, one day, right? The point is he'll get joy from all of that. But it's because of that consistency every day that he's fit and healthy. Not just his grandchildren, his own children, right? He's got 4 kids, I'm one of them. They don't worry about the fact that their dad's in his 93rd year. Not at all. They don't think of him as being an old man. They don't have to worry about his health. For a lot of people, like, oh, my parents are elderly. My grandparents are not, they're old. I need to take care of them. Like, none of us think that way. We're like parents, like mom and dad, like they're fit and healthy. They're an asset. They're not a liability, right? And that's how we want to be. We shouldn't expect this of other people, right? Like, oh, my dad, he's not doing this. He's not taking care of his health. Like, yeah, you can tell him, you can guide him, you can live by example, right? And that living by example is what's key. If you want your kids to live their life well, you'd better live your life well. Not just will they therefore live their lives well, but when they're in their 20s, they're not going to say, oh, I'm so lucky my dad left me a house, right? They're going to say, I don't care that my dad left me a house or not, because I work hard and I can buy 2 houses. What matters to me more is that my father's still around and I can, play football with him when I'm, my friends aren't around and I'm not caught up with my girlfriends or whatever. I can go and, chill out with my dad and do stuff, right? And he's fit and healthy. I never worry about him. He's traveling around and what's going to happen to him. That's the way we want to be. That's true wealth, right? And this is coming from a person who, who's been in that space, just the external wealth space. And now I like to, keep moving between them and not just like siloed, but they've got to be connected, right? If I'm physically capable, I'm going to be able to manage my external wealth better too, right? And see it in its right place, right? Give it its right place in my life.
Right.
So consistency, discipline, these are good things. These are things to look at with a smile, right? To think of discipline and consistency as a good thing and to seek it and to not get bored by it, because then if you're getting bored, then clearly you're not living your life well. You've not chosen the right things or your mindset isn't right. So.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. And you talk about your father so highly, and you also post so many videos with him on Instagram that are so interesting to see. Someone 93 years old, with such great health right now. Did you always grow up in a household, where you saw your parents actively work out or actively take care of their good health? And how was it like? What did your father do exactly over the years that has worked out for him? Because he's clearly doing something so right for his good health today, right?
Yeah, I know that Instagram reel that you mentioned, right? That's the one that's out there. So people they're a little bit confused. They think I learned stuff from my father, but they're not sure, because he's telling people to listen to me. So the fact of the matter is it's always two ways, right? Like even the people I mentor, the ones who aren't in good health, I learn from them all the time, right? It's through that experience that I become a better individual and I can serve them better and serve other people better. So with my parents, what I've seen is key thing is that learn by doing. But the most important thing is, and this is advice for all parents, and they've heard this, but you've got to live it, is that kids don't do what you ask them to do. They do what they see you do, right? Now, when I tell people that, look, you're doing this Ironman and you're doing this, whatever, extreme stuff, I can tell you, my father, I know he can swim, because when we were really little and we'd come to Goa, I was 4 or 5 years old, he would be in the water. I don't really know if he can cycle. I'm sure he can because he must have learned, but I've never seen him cycle ever. He's never been to a gym. So he's fit and healthy without doing all the things that we think you need to do, that you need to cycle or swim or go to a gym and all of that. No, he is constantly active, right? Even when he's 93, I never see him just sitting. He won't be just sitting unless he has to read the newspaper or eat a meal or be writing. He does some amount of writing or reading. He won't sit. He's always doing stuff. And it's the daily activities, the activities of daily life that are important. Sometimes he's helping my mom in the kitchen. He comes to my home, he'll climb up and clean the ceiling fans, right? It's like, Dad, my fans are dirty. Actually, I won't tell him. He'll spot them. It's like, son, your fans are dirty. I'm like, okay, it doesn't bother me. The next thing I know, he's got a ladder and he's cleaning my ceiling fans. So we want to be active that way. Food, it's very clear that so when he was in his 80s, I said to him, Dad, you know what? You could probably hit 100 if you just tweak what you're doing in terms of your diet. So I started doing that for him. And so he's given up a lot of things that he might have eaten earlier. One of the things was in his 80s, so mom and dad would typically have a glass of alcohol every day. So I stopped drinking, 30 years ago, right? I never ever stopped anyone else from drinking. I tell people the science, right? Like most people who drink even heavily. So I have a friend who has a PhD in chemical engineering, right? And he drinks heavily and chemical engineering, right? Not in literature. He doesn't know that alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen, just like cigarettes, right? And why do most people not know it? Again, it's the industry, right? So if you know that alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen and someone tells you and you say, hey, son, you're right. He's just stopped drinking that day, right? Once I explained it to him, right? So after drinking for whatever, decades, he just stopped. So it's these little things that he will do. Even now he'll read books on longevity and he'll be like, Dad, I want to, so I'll say, Dad, if you do this or versus doing that, it'll be better for you. So he'll ask me for tweaks. So I'll tell him, Dad, this thing that you've been doing all your life, now I understand the science behind it as to why it's helped. A simple thing like eating green leaves, right? Green leaves are so cheap to eat. I'm not talking about expensive arugula or kale, right? Just spinach. 10 rupees or whatever. 15 cents of spinach can feed a family for one day, right? In terms of the green leaf requirement, right? Most people won't eat green leaves. And I know this because I track what people eat on a daily basis, right? And I can see, unless I tell them, often they'll go for days without eating green leaves. Whereas I've seen my father do it. I see the science, and then I encourage him to keep doing it, right? So he'll keep eating right. I told you about his siesta. He'll keep moving around, and that's what you need. And of course, his spiritual health, right? He's extremely traditional and very religious, but also very spiritual. So he doesn't get bothered by the fact that not only do I fast during Ramadan, but he even I didn't know this. My own son, I guess, just observing me, he's at university and he says, yeah, Dad, I've been fasting this Ramadan. I was like, really? I didn't know that. He says, yeah. He said, I have Muslim friends and, they fast, so I fast with them. And then I heard, we did a 3-way call with my father. And then I heard him, I tell my dad, my son's been fasting. And my dad, rather than saying, oh, we're Brahmins, we shouldn't fast, he says, oh, Nikhil, that's a really good thing. I'm so proud of you that you're doing this. So that's the way to be, to realize that religion has got to serve us, right? These things that we do have got to serve us, right? We're not at the mercy of someone setting rules for us so that we can be part of that club, right? And fall into place. Each of us has a responsibility primarily to ourselves first, like numero uno, right? That's number one.
True.
And then everything else comes about. And one of your responsibilities might be, secondary responsibilities might be to your family, etc. But if you don't take care of yourself and you think you're serving your family well, I'm sorry, that's not right. Right? You're going to become a liability. You're going to become a burden. That's the key. Like my father, he's never, it's pretty much like, he doesn't use those words, but I can pretty much think he's saying like, screw you guys. This is what's good for me and I'm going to do it, right? Because I know it's the right thing to do, right? It's sort of that sort of attitude. And he said, if you agree with me, that's great because you'll do it too, and that's good. But if you don't agree with me, go do your own stuff. I'm not stopping you. And he's always been that way. He's never stopped any of his kids or grandkids from doing what they believe is right. Because the thing is you train a system well, and then the system performs. You train your kids well because they see you do the right thing, and then you have to leave them to go off and do stuff, right? You don't try and control your kids, right? Whatever be their age. I mean, at a young age, you have to as a parent, right? To keep them safe. But after a while, you got to say, I've taught you stuff. I live by example. You do the same thing, you'll have a happy life, right? I'll have a happy life. I'm in my 90s, whatever. You're in your 40s, 50s. We all have happy lives. And it's like this nice harmony, right? Across generations and doing many things, and not just physical health, but mental, emotional, spiritual. And if you get that in place, then you won't need much external wealth because we need that for the internal wealth. Right? But you'll make it automatically because if you're physically capable, you can always have more time and make more money. But if you're not, you'll have limited time and then you can't make money, right? You need time to get compound interest, right? That's without the passage of time, your money isn't going to grow. So that's the same thing with our internal health and wealth. Of course, you have to keep maintaining your internal wealth, right? If you don't use it, you'll lose it. With all of them, right? If I don't use my left arm, I'm going to lose that left arm.
Absolutely, that's amazing. I mean, your father's story is a great example because we see so many people, completely put their hands up and have no hope after they hit 60 or 65 or 70 that, I've reached 60. What can I do now for my health if I haven't done it for, the last 30 years or so? And they just give up because they don't feel like change can happen at that age. But seeing, of course, your father might have had a much healthier lifestyle apart from that, over the years, but also doing some things and unlearning or leaving some things back at the age of 80 is very difficult. And just making these little tweaks, if they can really help us make some change. I mean, people need to understand that it's really never too late. I mean, it's okay if you can begin with the little things even at 80. And this is a great goal to have in mind that when you first of all, you age gracefully, and when you don't have to depend on your kids. I mean, it's okay. It's a good thing to say that, my kids will take care of me. You have that support system. But that doesn't have to be like a thing that you fall back on no matter what, right? I mean, to have a sense of control over your life, even after 80, even after 70, 80, 90, that, I can take care of myself. I have control over my health. I don't have to be dependent on somebody else and, probably be a burden on them or something like that. That's a great goal to have. It's very simple. It's not very out of the box, and you can begin with that even at the age of 80 or doing some little things here and there, right? So that's really amazing to know. Thank you for sharing that with us. And as we come to the end of the episode today, I mean, there's so much to talk about. I'm sure we
could speak the whole day and we wouldn't be done. Yeah.
I know, absolutely. You have so much to share. I mean, I can just see with the amount of experiences and the knowledge that you have right now. I hope that we can do another episode in the coming months. But today, as we conclude the episode, do you have any last messages for us?
I guess, in some sense, a recap. Everybody, please remember that ultimately it's just spiritual health that'll matter, but you must do stuff in the physical dimension. You need to make sure that you're consistent. And the key thing is to understand is that if you don't track stuff, right? If you don't measure, monitor, you won't be able to control it. And then affect the outcome. So don't just assume that because things seem okay, you're probably okay. There's a reason that so many diseases are called silent killers. You might not see the symptoms, or the symptoms appear very gradually and you might not notice them, right? I like to not trim my beard, and I definitely won't dye my hair because I look much younger. So I might be chronologically, closer to 60 than to 50, but biologically I'm much younger, right? And the key thing to understand is that if you do the right thing, then you will reverse your aging, right? So you might be, say someone hits 80. There's no reason biologically they won't be 50 if they do the right thing. And there's no reason that if you're, like there are a lot of, I know people who are in their 40s, but their biological age is probably 65. But there's no reason that when they go from age 40 to 41, that they don't reverse their biological age from 65 to 60, then 60 to 50, 50 to 40. And by the time they're 50, maybe their biological age is closer to 30, right? All of these things are possible. But you need to realize that wisdom comes from knowing that you should have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset, that everything can be changed, right? Like the sea behind me has been changing every minute, right? Every day the tide is at a different time. Like the full moon, not almost the full moon, the moon set a couple of hours ago, right? There's always change, and we have some effort now, small amount of effort. It doesn't need to be a lot. You don't need to kill yourself doing stuff to affect the future, and the future can be really bright if you do the right thing.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful message. Thank you so much, Puru, for being here today and spending this hour with us and telling us everything you know about. And I'm sure there's a lot more we can learn from you. And for the ones who don't follow you already, there'll be a link in the description below. They can reach out to you on your Instagram or your website, learn a lot more from you. You have so many amazing articles on your websites as well. So there's so much to learn from there, and also to see you visually doing so many things and posting these amazing videos on your Instagram. There's so much to learn from. So I hope that they can reach out to you, connect with you, probably work with you sometime in the future, and of course better their health along the way. So thank you so much once again for being here.
Great, thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for having me over. And I wish everybody a good life.